That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. A few things before we get started. As always, tickets are available for Rebels of Disclosure 2025. If you guys want to come to a 4-day disclosure event in Grafton, Illinois, this is your chance to do so. May 12th through the 15th. All the information is available at journeytotruth.online. We have 13 speakers this year, a great lineup, beautiful venue, bonfires, sky watches, the whole 9 yards. We go to the Cahokia Mounds afterwards for a field trip. It's the largest ancient pyramid site in North America. It's a lot of fun. You can go for 4 days, 1 day. If you can't make it in person, grab a live stream pass. Like I said, journeytotruth.online has all that information, and we hope to see you there. It is right around the corner. It is coming up quick. So take advantage of that before it sells out. And today we have a returning guest, Jesse Beltran. We interviewed him a couple months ago with Desiree Foley, and they were promoting the Mind Nexus conference that they're putting on, and it has to do with, well, it's just a disclosure conference, but Jesse in particular specializes in his research in the field of mind control and implants. And it's very extensive research. It gets into Havana syndrome, the mark of the beast, UFO, and NHI. It ties this all together. And, he was just telling us how he used to be a naysayer with some of this stuff, but his own research changed his mind. And I think that's the case with a lot of people who dig into these topics and go down these rabbit holes. And he has been doing a lot of work in this field, and he has some new information to bring us since the last time we talked. And we're very excited to have him back. So, welcome to the show, Jesse.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back on and platform, and I appreciate people like yourselves who allow us to tell the truth about phenomenon and information that the general population really hasn't been grasping to. But we've been changing the tide, and we're really excited about what we've been doing. Um, when we last spoke, we were doing the Mind Nexus conference, and we ended up doing the Mind Nexus retreats, and I think that's going to be the format moving forward. We're getting ready to start promoting our next one, which was really, really life changing. We had the Mind Nexus retreat in Tucson, Arizona, and as you said, I was a naysayer with regard to the UFO phenomenon or this interdimensional type technology. And that might be a good place to start. So when we had that retreat in Tucson, um, it really was an environment where the vibration of everyone was really, really elevated. And I've always heard in the background that allowing your vibration to go to that extent really opens you up to a lot of this phenomenon. But I'm very left brain. And so since 2010, for those who are just tuning in or may not have seen the last episode, myself and a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Hall met in San Antonio, Texas, and got on the topic about a strange phenomenon that people were approaching him with. And what it was is they were saying that they were hearing these strange sounds in their head, which they associated with some type of weird signal anomaly coming into them, followed by short-term, long-term memory fog, nausea, vomiting, severe vertigo, and electrical shocks to the extremities that sometimes cause uncontrollable body movements. Well, in 2016, our United States diplomats in Havana, Cuba, started expressing the same type of complaints. And the United States really discredited them, said that it was mass hysteria. They even at one point blamed it on crickets, the sound of crickets, until the Canadian diplomats started having the same phenomenon. Now, on May 8th of 2024, the Department of Homeland Security held a hearing and a gentleman by the name of, he was retired Lieutenant Colonel Greg Egren, gave testimony that this phenomenon is real. It is happening to the best of our best, not only the U.S. diplomats, but the best of our best in the CIA, the best of our best in the FBI, and now it's happening to congressional members in our Senate. And what Colonel Greg Egren said, that this is a technology that is meant under these long duration, slow kill, and that's exactly what he said, events to make a person feel like they're crazy. And really what happens, and this ties into what Dr. Hall and I have been covering. When Dr. Hall felt that there was this frequency, he felt that we should be able to test around an area of a person's body and see if there are some frequency anomalies that can be detected. And he was. And so I said, well, isn't that enough to at least have them go to their medical professional and get further testing to see why? And he said, no, what is happening once you mention that you're hearing, you automatically get diagnosed as being delusional or have some type of form of psychosis. And then you're driven to force medication. And then these people were being re-victimized again. And so I started an organization called the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies. Our first meeting was in Sacramento, California. And I'm just going to briefly go through this because other people have heard this. And 100 people showed up with the same complaints. And we said, okay, we had something, let's start testing on a mass scale. And our first testing event, 300 people showed up. And the people who were most affected were Caucasian females in their 40s, recently single, widowed, or divorced, highly educated. Then it was Caucasian males, African American females, African American males, Asians, Hispanics, and it dwindled down from there. It stayed consistent across the United States until we got to the East Coast. African American and Caucasian flipped. And then there was a weird anomaly in Virginia where a bunch of military subcontractors had me come and test them. And what we were doing is we were using a device called the JM20 Pro that would test for frequency detections at a focal area. And then we would come back with the frequency counter and get a numerical frequency. In the military subcontractors, there's a case that's still going through the courts today that we've been successful. Now, this took me to Europe, where we took groups of people in controlled environments and were able to finally prove that for whatever reason, there was a frequency emission coming from the human body. Ultimately, that has now led to the surgical removal of implants. And the case that's out there that we're talking about now, because I've been given permission, is one of my earliest clients. Her name was Bonnie Kellerby, and she's out of the Bay Area in California. They removed 3 of these implants out of her, and under high spectrum microscopy, were able to identify these as biosensors, and they were having nanowires and so forth, and they were able to establish the patents and the companies that own these. So we have multiple cases like this. And the bottom line is, I started this project, and when we got the data, I sort of went dormant because I had gotten full custody of my son. And what was happening for those of us who were being very effective in disseminating this information into the general population, they would send Child Protective Services over and claim that you were an unfit parent. So because of my son's situation, I didn't want to sacrifice his opportunities in his future. So I started doing this in secret, continuing to help people, test them, and coach them on what to do so that you can have the same outcome like the Bonnie Kellerbys of the world. And once my son turned 18, I said, okay, now's the time, particularly now that they're saying that this Havana syndrome or anomalous health incidence phenomenon exists. So that's it in a nutshell. So let's talk about what happened in Tucson. My partners with the Cosmic Clarity Connections, and My Nexus Live is our brand, is Desiree Foley and a gentleman by the name of Mike Grady, who's a phenomenal marketer. And he's been able to help us get on platforms such as yourselves and around the world. And now we're doing platforms within 24 hours of getting up to 1 million views. Because people are understanding that this phenomenon is real. I was independently scanning people again, one-on-one, but the outcry for people wanting to have RF scans was just astronomical. And so now we've been on tour across the United States, and we are seeing a difference from what we were seeing back then. You know, back then in 2010 to 2015, you had what I call the AHIs, which are the civilian population, and you can superimpose their scans over each other, and they would line up. And what I mean by that is, for example, there's specific focal areas on the body where we are getting these detections. Right and left TMJ, occipital portion of the head, base of the neck, right and left shoulders, clavicle, apex, mid upper quadrant of the abdomen, and the lower lumbars. Now, depending on whether you were a soldier or you were incarcerated, those areas would line up differently, but in similar locations. This is how we were able to conclude that this is not just random. This is happening very consistently on all the people who were suffering from these anomalies. Now, a few months ago, I had the head physician of a 3-letter agency. He made me promise not to disclose his name. But he did say the reason he's contacting me is because he says that his exact words were, you and Dr. Hall are kind of Renaissance men. And he goes, I must agree with you that there is overlap. And what he meant was overlap, that he was seeing 338 Havana syndrome federal employees, because they said that it only is happening to federal employees and the family members. But the family members are civilians. So he said there's overlap, which meant that the symptoms were the same. And he says, the only reason I'm contacting you is because I'm intrigued. I saw the reports. You're pulling out implants out of people. He also shared with me that because of the Lou Alazano story about there was a veteran who had a surgical implant removed that they claimed was alien. He did share with me, and I'm not sure why. He said that they are now doing a study on encounters with individuals who claim that they've had a UAP experience. And he says they have specific criteria. It has to be within a certain distance, and there has to be witnesses during that event. He says they are now doing studies on these types of events. Now, I was a naysayer about this, the UFO or even the MILAB phenomenon, because according to my data and the data we have been gathering and the surgical implant removals, is that all of these can be traced back to some type of human intervention. And so I've always stayed steadfast to the data, because I wanted to see, at least we can say we can prove this is happening. The data shows this, and we can hang our hat on that's going to be the truth, at least for that phenomenon. Now, on day one, when I was there in Tucson, Mike Grady, who was a smoker, unfortunately, we were at this mansion and we had to go down at the end of the driveway, and we were just chatting, and this was at nighttime, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and we're literally maybe this far apart chatting with each other. In between us comes this white ball of light. It was a white orb, and it flies off. And I said to Mike, I said, did you see that? Mike didn't see it, but he goes, but I felt it, and his hair was standing on end. I said, well, I saw it clear as day. So I said, that's interesting. Later on the next day, they did what is called a CE5. I guess this is something that Dr. Greer does with teams and groups. And so, me being a master hypnotist, as some of you are aware, I'm saying, okay, this is probably an event where they're going to be putting people in trance, and they're going to be making subliminal suggestions, and they're probably going to have auditory or visual hallucinations. And so I'm being the president of the organization. I'm a team player, so I go along with the program. But I'm watching. I'm skeptical, and my eyes are open, and I'm saying, okay, well, let's listen to the induction and how they're getting people to go into this state. None of the language that was being used was anything that I've been practicing hypnosis for over 20 years, would indicate that any of the language was to induce any of this type of phenomena that I thought was going to happen. While we were doing this little exercise at night in Tucson, all of a sudden in the sky, this ball of light appears, and then it turns to an outer circular white ring, and it has basically what you would call an orb in the center. and it exploded and it illuminated the ground. And several of us were watching and we go, oh my God, did you just see that? So number two event happens and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then on day three, I get up very early. I sleep maybe 2 or 3 hours. I'm up having a cup of coffee in the morning and I'm looking at the sky and I see, oh, that must be a satellite, white light moving. And all of a sudden it does a right angle, takes off. And then 45 minutes, a fleet of 8 of them fly by. So that was very life changing to me.
Wow.
Now, and I didn't know what to make of it, but I said, okay, well, at least I have to accept something's going on. It really has to, I really believe it have to do with the environment and your level of vibration where it's at. I am now a believer that that does have something to do with this phenomenon and allowing you to at least have these experiences. And in my 20 years of scanning, now we've been on a tour because people were asking us, please come to our city and test us. And so we started on the weekend of the inauguration in Washington, D.C. Following week, we were invited to North Carolina to scan a bunch of people, then to Houston, then to Tampa, and then we just finished up in San Antonio, and then we're taking a little 3-week break, and then we'll be up in Northern California and back on tour again. But I will say this, something is different. The scans that we were doing back in 2010 to 2015, usually, 7 or 8 areas were very consistent. Once in a while, you'll get something up into the 10 range. And those are usually the people who are incarcerated. Now something has happened, and I have a suspicion that it may have been after this pandemic event that we had. People are lighting up in numbers that we have not seen before. We're talking 15 to 17 locations. Now, we had a couple of interesting scanning events. On day one in Tampa, there was a woman who came in and she was very distraught, in tears, and she says, I'm being hit very hard. When they say they're being hit, what they're talking about is a frequency emission with this AHI phenomenon, and it really affects them in a negative way. And most of the time, I've always felt that you can overcome this because it's really about your mental fortitude on how you can deal with this. But when I scanned this first woman for the first time, and this was on film, we're doing the scan, sometimes I have to pull the clothing a little taut so we can get the wands on our devices close enough to see if there's a signal emission in that area. And I was electrocuted by her. And you could feel the energy in the room. And when I talk about electrocution, this is not we're on a carpet, static electricity type shock. This is putting your tongue on a battery type stuff, but a little bit higher than that, going up into your body. And I literally, I jumped back and I went, what the heck was that? Didn't think anything of it. So, no, okay, that just must have been something, just weird anomaly. So later on, we had another woman come who said that she claimed that she was abducted and implanted in the womb area by an alien or entity. And I usually, when I hear these over the last 20 years, where they talk about having this phenomenon in the pelvic region, that it usually is because they're coming up positive in the lower lumbar thoracic region. And our thought process is that you have nerve endings that go out through the body and they come around to the front, and that for whatever reason, something must be being stimulated in that region, and that's why they're having the symptoms in the areas. But for the first time in all these years that I've been doing this, when we got to the pelvic region, it pinged our equipment, and I've never seen anything like it. And this is the woman who claimed that she was abducted by these entities or alien type beings. And so I said, well, that's interesting. And while we're doing this, we film everything. So you have Mike Grady, who's behind the camera, Desiree, who's writing down the data. And then I think you guys know Ben Chastain from Rice TV.
Oh,
Ben was in the living room observing everything because he's helping us with the project right now, and we wanted him to understand and get some experience about the type of work that we do. Well, as I'm scanning her on her left side, the only way I can describe is I felt like someone was grabbing me from behind and pulling me away from this woman. It was odd, and I didn't think anything of it, so I didn't want anyone to, I'm always remaining professional, and I'm scanning, and I'm not sure what to make of it, but I'm continuing to scan her, and then I get electrocuted, just like I did by the woman that I described earlier, and I'm like, wow, this is really intense. We're feeling this weird energy around me, whatever. I did not know this, but Ben's over here and he says he sees these entities grabbing me. And he says he starts to freak out. The woman that I'm scanning is saying, "You're gaining pale and diaphoretic." She's a nurse. "Are you okay?" I go, "I'm fine." And so when I get to her right side, I start to get this chest discomfort. She goes, "You're being attacked." And the only thing that intuitively I can think of, and as the words that came to me, and I'm thinking, I say to myself internally, because I still am not giving an indication to anyone that I'm having this experience. And all I think about is I say the word God's light. And just like that, the phenomenon goes away. And it wasn't until afterward that Ben says what he was seeing. She says what she was seeing. And so it gets me to say that all of the belief systems and foundation of being very left brain are now starting to be challenged.
Right.
In this next campaign this campaign that we've been doing. So something's going on, something's different. I can't put my finger on it. And then is something that think about you guys when we talk about the MyLab phenomenon. We have a case where we had a special ops guy, a soldier, who had this experience, and there are a lot of similarities where you have this loss of time, and then you start to have these weird phenomena after the loss of time. And this special ops soldier, we scanned him, and he did come up positive on a preliminary RF scan. So we sent him to have what's called a nonlinear junction scan. And in that nonlinear junction scan, he lit up in 6 areas. But what was intriguing is they pulled up a frequency that we haven't seen in the 15 years that we've been doing this consistently. And when we dwelled into who owned this frequency, I expected it to be the United States government or the Department of Defense of the United States. And we couldn't find any indication that the United States owned this frequency. But what we did find is I decided, and my instinct was telling me, let's check some other countries. And I checked Europe, which NATO. And sure enough, NATO had the leasing rights to this frequency. And so I wonder, and I'm going, well, why the hell would NATO own this frequency over one of our special ops guys? It's a U.S. soldier. And I'm keeping my belief systems to myself. I have a theory about why that is. So I'm going to jump to another topic. There's a very popular program out there right now where they're looking at these UAP phenomena. And they're getting this really unusual frequency in the 1.6042 gigahertz range. And they, at least in the series, they say they don't know where it's coming from. Well, I happen to be friends with someone who is close to the team, and he's also a special ops person. And I sent them the video. I said, "Hey, I figured out who owns that 1.6 gigahertz frequency because I was able to trace it live and videotape what was happening and the data that was being disseminated out. That 1.6 was actually from a Russian satellite."
Wow.
So I said, "Here you go. This is in case you guys don't already know. Here's proof positive of where that's coming from." And so I started to share with him about what I really did. And he didn't know that I was investigating this implant phenomenon. related to the AHIs. And when I told them about this frequency, special ops guys don't show emotions very often, and they don't get freaked out very often. But when I started to talk about this frequency, he says, Jesse, you better have a secondary plan. He goes, I'm going to have to distance myself from this topic because I need to worry about my family and my security. He goes, but this is secret soldier shit. You better have a secondary plan because they're going to come after you. I've never seen him this freaked out, but it was enough to really shake him up. And all the data and evidence that I was showing, because I was showing pictures of the implants, talking about these special ops guys, and why would this be? So I think it's all tied in together.
Yeah.
And
let me interject here for a second. So this is, first of all, it's the easiest interview ever. You could just keep going. This is great.
Right.
I don't even, you're answering all my questions before I can ask them. But so I want to just clarify a few things. You said after the pandemic that you noticed an uptick in implants that probably are, the way I perceive that is they're directly related to the jab, the vaccine, maybe. I don't know if you have any data that supports that. And also, I don't think you haven't actually covered exactly. So what are the implants doing and what happens to people once they have them removed?
Okay. So I can only legally say this is that the type of testing we do, we can only say that there is, for whatever reason, anomalous frequencies being detected at very specific focal points on the human body. You have to go through a process. Not only do you do the preliminary RF scans, you get the nonlinear junction scans, you got to get toxicology reports, you got to get medical imagery. And even at then, if you see something, then you can only call it a foreign body. And then once you've done all that and you have enough supporting data and evidence, then you can get a surgeon who will remove these foreign bodies, and then you have to have it identified. So it's a long process. The cases that we're dealing with right now have taken upwards of 15 years to get to the point where we're at. So that's one thing. So I want to, the reason I bring that up is because I want to caution everyone, just because we're coming up positive on an RF scan, I can't say that there's implants. You have to go through that whole process in order to say that you have implants. Okay. What we are seeing, and because you asked if we have any evidence about what happened after the jab, what we can say is that after the jab, they have looked at the COVID vaccine under high spectrum microscopy. And what they are finding is there is definitely nanotech in it. Okay, so what is nanotech? Nanotech is technology that is about 1/1,000,000th of a centimeter in size. So traditional X-rays, MRI, CT scans, you're never going to see this stuff. You're going to have it under high spectrum microscopes in order to see these things. And what they saw in the medium is that this nanotech is evenly dispersed. Now, if you expose it to RF or radio frequencies, what they discovered is that they started to self-assemble into a square microchip array. Okay. Now, nanotech can go bypass the blood-brain barrier. So you can guide this stuff with radio frequencies to travel anywhere. So I use this analogy. We know what a train cart looks like, and each train cart, let's call that, just for explanation's sake, is a nano barrel. And that's what these things are. They're nano barrels. You can put material inside the nano barrel, guide it with a radio frequency, and then send another radio frequency to it so it will explode and release internally what's in it. Now, when we're dealing with this tech, it's self-assembling, it's self-replicating, and it can attach to your DNA. I have a strong suspicion, based on the data that we're starting to gather, that this is the phenomena we're dealing with. They've also looked at the lidocaine derivative when you go to a dentist or any numbing agents. They're finding the same thing in it. The nanotech is inside of it. They're exposing it to RF frequencies, and it's self-assembling. And that's where we're at. So our hope right now is that those who have been involved in this phenomenon the longest are still going to have the larger tech. And those are the cases that are really going to save everyone. But nonetheless, it's important that everyone wakes up. We are now facing a time that is unprecedented in human evolution. The technology has far surpassed any of our laws, and our forefathers never could have fathomed that we would be at the juncture that we are today with regards to technology and AI. This is far surpassing even Moore's law exponentially in what our capabilities are. So you talked about the capability. What can this do? Through the Freedom of Information Act, we have uh, information that was classified and has been declassified. And one of them is the New World Vistas report that was released in 1994. And it was by the United States Air Force. And it was how to keep the United States Air Force a superpower 50 years into the future. So they got their greatest minds together. And in it, they talk about this technology and what can it do. In it, they disclose that you can embed memory sets from one human brain into another. That was intriguing to them, including embedding false memories. We also have other declassified documents that talked about that they have been experimenting with our prisoners, particularly at Vacaville Prison in California, utilizing this type of technology as early as 1972. And this was disclosed by documents from our United States Senate or Congress when they talked about mind control and experimentation. The United States is not new to this. We have been experimenting on our own people for some time. We talk about the Tuskegee experiments where they inflicted syphilis into African American populations and just let it run rampant. It killed a lot of people. It disfigured a lot of people. Our LSD experiments that they were doing on Johns. Ewan Cameron, the United States he was a Canadian psychiatrist out of Canada, and the United States hired him and gave him millions of dollars in funding to see if you can erase the brain of a human adult. And he would do things like use electroshock therapy, long-term drug therapy to induce long-term sleep. They would put these helmets over them and play recordings utilizing what is called in hypnosis the law of repetition, and really messing up these people. What Ewan Cameron was doing back then in its infancy is nothing compared to what is happening now. Now, remember, a lot of these victims, including our diplomats, are talking about hearing these strange sounds, including voices. Now, I'm a hypnotherapist. Let's take the technology aside. 30%, studies say as much as 30% of the human population is what we would call highly suggestible. And that means that they're easily influenced. And if you know how to utilize language and you can covertly program people to do things that they would not normally do. Now you add the advent of this technology, now you have an exponential scenario where this is basically on steroids. And this is what is happening across the board. I had two gentlemen, one by the name of Aaron Alexis, who contacted me. He was a military soldier who called me, and he was expressing, he was having this experience, and he heard that I might be able to help. I was trying to coach him on, yes, I can guide you on what you need to do, but this is not something that's a quick fix. What happens to people initially, they're in fight or flight. His makeup was he was in fight mode. And what he ended up doing is going and killing 16 people on the East Coast at the Navy Yard. And he wrote down, inscribed on the butt of his gun, here's my ELF, extremely low frequency. And then there was an attorney out of Florida by the name of Myron May. Same thing. He contacted me. And I had no idea that these guys were going to do this. Otherwise, I would have done anything and everything in my power to try to stop it. But he was impatient, didn't want to wait. He said, I have bigger fish to fry. I thought he was going after them legally. And he ended up going and shooting 3 people at the research lab over at the university there in Florida. So that's where we're at today. So what our campaign is, and our team is really to educate the general population that this phenomenon is real. And with the help of Mike Grady and Desiree and platforms like yourselves, we're becoming very, very effective and very efficient at doing this. And recently we came upon an opportunity, and I have been brainstorming with our team, what can we do to really engage the majority of the world in this? Now, Colonel Egren said that this phenomenon is happening on every continent with the exception of Antarctica.
Hmm.
And so I said, what if we could come up with a platform? And we were thinking docuseries, and where we can engage everyone somehow. And how would we do that? And what would that look like? So the number 2 most investigated topic on Google is the UFO phenomenon. And I said, wow, that's intriguing. We know Dr. Lear was pulling out implants out of people and saying that they were alien. I said, well, let's start there. And because we knew that the implants that he was pulling out, that we can always trace them back to some type of biomedical research corporation or university. I said, well, that's a good place to start. And when we started talking, and I was thinking about you guys, and I said, well, we've got the My Lab. There are people who say that they've been abducted by the military and implanted. I said, that's number 2. I said, now that the advent that Colonel Egren testified in front of Congress that this phenomenon is happening, it's happening on our homeland, and in fact, happening all over the globe except for Antarctica. I said, well, that covers our Havana syndrome or AHI. And I said, well, what other topic can we bring into this to really grasp the attention of the masses? And then that's the religious aspect. And I said, well, this is the mark of the beast. Why don't we just encompass all that? And if you could play that link that I gave you, and this will bring it all together, and you guys will really understand where I'm coming from.
And that's interesting too. While I queue this up, the fact that Antarctica always seems to be left out of the mix with all of this stuff, any of the topics. So
Correct.
would that indicate that these signals are coming from Antarctica?
Well, I'm a firefighter paramedic, and there's a brother and sisterhood, and we never turn our back against a brother or sister. You don't care what they're going through, or particularly open up a topic of discussion. Well, there's a guy down there who claims that he's a firefighter, and I reached out to him, and knowing the brother and sisterhood, I didn't think it would be an issue. But he found out that I was a hypnotherapist, and his immediate response is, I don't have any association with hypnotherapists. What that tells me is, number 1, he's not truly in the brother and sisterhood, but he is disseminating some interesting information. He claims that the V2K, this signal, is actually being emitted down there in Antarctica, and they have this faster than speed of light communication system down there that is embedded in the ice, and this is where this signal is coming from. I just find it intriguing that Colonel Egren did say and testify that it's happening everywhere except for down there.
I woke up and I felt like something was on, or even in my spine.
So there are probably hundreds, actually, more like thousands of hours of UFO footage, documents, reports, testimonials from everyday people all the way to the top. And what do we get? What do they actually release? The table scraps.
So I was in the Army, and recently I was scanned, and that's when I found out that there was something inside me. I have no idea who put it there and for what purpose.
So this makes me wonder what other kinds of advanced technologies that exist that are being kept hidden from us, such as these UFOs or UAPs that everyone is seeing in the skies. Are they aliens, black budget military programs, other countries such as China or Russia? Someone knows the truth.
For the first time in my life, I finally feel I have a purpose. I have felt so alone and lost for so long that I don't want others to go through what I did. And you're not alone. This is why I'm sharing my story, so we could finally expose the truth of what is happening to us. The truth has been hidden for far too long, and it's time. It's time to lift the veil.
Yeah, that is just a short glimpse of what we've done. We now have an investor who is supporting this project and wants us to disseminate it across the globe. And so this is about to happen. It literally is about to happen. And so we're so excited about this.
Yeah, it's huge,
Yeah,
and
amazing.
I think that, man, I guess I didn't realize, we always hear about the implants, the magnitude of it. We're talking potentially, we can only speculate, but almost everyone at this point having this nanotech in their body and emitting these signals. And like you mentioned in the previous interview, these implants act as a receiver to the signal so that the memory or whatever that the frequency can actually be used to mind control the person in some capacity. So it's very concerning, and I think it's amazing that you're doing this, especially the secret soldier aspect of it that special forces guy was talking about. That's very real. And you mentioned also a lot of those guys don't show much emotion. Well, that's also because of the implants. Like they're emotional suppressant implants in the base of the spine. I mean, there's information that's out there available for that. And so those guys are, the fight or flight is literally programmed out of them, and they're just programmed to fight. And that's exactly what all those implants are doing for the special soldiers guys. But Aaron, did you have any questions for him before we move on?
Where would you, I do actually, where would you say, how do you think the extraterrestrial factors into this? Obviously, you're talking about UFOs, UAPs. There's obviously, in my opinion, ETs involved at the highest levels above human level of all this, in my opinion, and you could say angelic and demonic beings as well. So ultimately, it's a spiritual war when you get down to it, to the core of this. And like you said yourself, your experience, you literally called on the light of God, and that's when the second you did that is when it ended. And I've heard countless stories similar to that. Tyler's had experiences similar to that. I've had my own spiritual experiences. So clearly there's more going on than just the physical aspects of this. And what's your take on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, uh, for whatever reason, I think my experience or my journey just was taken to a whole new level once Tucson started. And I don't believe anything happens by accident. I don't know if you're aware, but there was a podcast and was one of our um, most successful ones when it had to do about an NDE experience that I had as a child. And I had a tonsillectomy. My parents, everything went fine. My parents took me home. I was just told, the doctor told them, just feed me ice cream. So I was a happy 6-year-old kid. I get to have ice cream, and as long as I just stay quiet. I went to bed that night, woke up, and then my bed was completely covered in blood. No white spot except for where my body laid. And then as soon as I said that, I yelled for my mother. I hemorrhaged. Long story short, my father's blowing every red light. I'm bleeding out in the back of his 57 Chevy, and he's crying and saying, "Please save my son." They rush me to the OR. I float to the top of the room. I watch him doing CPR on me, and then everything goes black. I see the light, go to the light, and I tell everyone, who are the two most important people to a 5 or 6-year-old, and what kind of love do they even comprehend at that point? And it's mom and dad. But when I got into that light, um, it wasn't even close. It was mom and dad's love times infinity. And as that 5 or 6-year-old boy, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay there. Um, I so vividly, consciously am so aware, and the memory still is deep within the pit of my stomach, my soul. And male voice says to me, "I'm sorry, it's not your time." And then I start to cry and throw a tantrum as a 5 or 6-year-old boy would do. And then he says it one more time, "I'm sorry, it's not your time. You have to go back." And so I start to fall. And then boom, hit the code operating table. We got him back. So I always contemplated what does that mean? I thought humans were special and they had free will. And why wasn't I allowed to use my free will? Even though I was a child, I'm still considered human. And what it taught me something, is that there is a higher power in a different dimension. And and the words that come to me instinctively is that I believe that was God. And God is the ultimate programmer. And for whatever reason, God knew why my soul had to come back. And I have a feeling I'm fulfilling that mission right now. I'm disseminating information that no one could have even fathomed. That back in 2010, 2011, even my own fire department probably thought that I was a little off my rocker. But they knew me as being the guy who was very technically advanced. I was working with line of sight microwave technology back then. Aside from being a firefighter, I had an ISP. I was building networks. I was inventing things and doing proprietary programming. But my point is this: is with the advent of AI, we are learning that the human species somehow went from learning like this and had this exponential increase that surpassed Moore's law. And now we are now getting into quantum computers, quantum entanglement. The Chinese have developed technology that they can now see into 72 dimensions. So this interdimensional thing, I think we're spot on. I think we're about to engage in an information age that not even us could comprehend. But we need to be careful, because there's an interview by Elon Musk that talks about the advent of AI, and the topic of God comes up, and it says that he says that humans are creating an AI God. And what does that mean? There are some companies out there that are re-envisioning what prison life or incarceration is going to be like. And if you Google it, it's called, and you just type in the topic, the future of incarceration. They're talking about erasing your memory sets, embedding it with new memory sets. So you commit a crime, so you can decide whether they're going to increase the time limits to spend 100 or 200 years in prison, or let us reprogram your memory so that you can experience what the victims went through, what their family members go through, their emotional traumas, what your victim felt as you were committing this crime against them. And it'll only be 3 minutes, but for you, it's going to seem like an eternity. And then they talk about bringing in your family members into therapy so they can coach them on how to deal with your new memory sets. And they're talking about doing this all over the world.
Yeah.
And Elon talks about that we are going to create an AI God. We need to be very, very careful because we're changing our species. And then once we change our species, then the definition of human rights no longer applies. And so this is the juxtaposition that we're in. And everyone needs to wake up, and we are the masses, and we need to understand that the reason they want to control us is because they know they can't control us if we band together, and this divide and conquer methodology has to stop.
Right.
We all bleed, breathe the same.
Absolutely.
Spot
So many fascinating things you said there. The multidimensional aspect to this, quantum mechanics, quantum entanglement, all that, the many worlds theory is, coming to fruition right now. And we're understanding that there's a lot of truth to that, and parallel realities and other dimensions. I didn't know that they could detect 72 dimensions. That's interesting. But as far as the AI goes, I would argue that the AI guy has already been created. When they tell us stuff on the surface level, it's already been accomplished in some capacity in the black budget programs, right? And it just gets leaked out, and they make it seem like, oh, like this could be the result if we keep going down this path. Actually, it's the exact opposite. We've already gone down this path and this is the result, but I believe they're making it appear as if it's happening in real time. So I think the AI guide already exists, but the issue, or I would almost say it's a non-issue, is that the so AI, what's it trying to do? It's trying to replicate what a human can already do. That's its primary goal. What does that
Creation
tell us?
itself.
Yeah,
God's creation itself.
yeah. What does
Is
that tell
to
us?
create. Right.
It tells us that we have all the power. It's doing everything it can to become human. And
Mhm.
that means that we have all the power. So no matter what AI thinks it's accomplishing, it can never be us. And we hold the power to overwrite that. The only reason there's an AI God being created is because everything organic that exists in nature, the devil has tried to create his own version of it by inverting that and
Exactly.
using it for a nefarious purpose. So it's just a duality of our reality. And I think we can understand it exists and overcome it, like you said, by uniting and doing exactly what you're doing, by letting people know that, hey, this is how they're controlling us. There's literal chips in your body that we can start to discover, we can learn about and remove, and we can overcome this. And they can't, you know, use us like puppets anymore. So I think it's beautiful what you're doing. Everything that you brought to the table today was, expertly delivered. Thank you for that, by the way, and doing what you're doing. And I'm sure you could talk for hours. Is there anything else that you would want to, let our audience know or let us know about before we wrap this up?
No, if you believe that you are or someone you love is suffering from this phenomenon, and you want us to come to your region, we're more than happy to do that. All that we ask is that what makes it palatable is if you get at least 10 people who want to be scanned, you can go to our website at mynexuslive.com, make an inquiry, and if you want to sponsor a clinic, we're more than happy to bring our team out to you, and then our team will give you the information that you need to do that. So there are a lot of people who are reaching out, including other countries, Australia, the UK, and even upwards in Alaska. They're asking us to come. So, but if you do that, we're more than happy to help you with that, and we'll coach you on how others have been successful and ultimately going from the beginning of the RF frequency all the way up to having a surgical implant removal, and we'll guide you on that.
So that brings me to an interesting question. Would you consider bringing your team out to our event in May in Grafton, Illinois, and doing these scans for our audience? And maybe
Yeah, most
we can talk off camera. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if you did come, we would definitely, arrange that, work out some sort of a deal. But there's roughly going to be 200 people there. That's what the venue holds every year. So maybe not everybody will want to be scanned, but I have a hunch that everybody will want to be scanned. And
yeah.
it's a 4-day event, so there'd be time. I don't know if that's something you would even want to take on, but I'm just throwing it out there. It's very possible that we could arrange that.
Yeah, well, definitely we could talk about that. Doing 10 to 15 people in a day is a chore. It's a lot of work.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if we can get 200 people done, but we might be able to do like 30 to 50 people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean,
That
we
would
could.
be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it would be really cool. I, for one, have been wanting to be scanned ever since I learned about what you do. So, and I know I've experienced the targeting and stuff, and in some cases, a very extreme level, at an extreme level. So, I would be. Go ahead.
There is one thing. A lot that goes on with this phenomenon is this tinnitus. And we've now been able to prove that there is synthetically induced tinnitus. A lot of these victims talk about having this high pitch ringing 365 days a year, and some of them have had it for 20 years. With the advent of the late Dr. Duncan, who he and I were working on some technology, specifically filters to filter out background noises that we were getting in recordings, I stumbled upon a solution on how to get rid of it. And we're being very effective. Around 98% of the people who we try this on who have synthetically induced tinnitus, we get rid of within seconds. It's very emotional for someone who's been suffering for 20 years and all of a sudden, oh my God, I don't hear that crazy ringing. And that's the part that really debilitates people. It doesn't allow yourself to get rest. It gives you brain fog. Your cognition is scattered all over the place, and all that starts to come back according to their experiences. Now, we're more than happy to teach anyone that, and it's very inexpensive. All it is a $5 piece of software, and we use basic physics of frequency jamming. We match that pitch, we take the amplitude up, and we bring it down just a hair, and it completely eliminates it.
Wow. That's incredible, actually. And yeah, I know people that have tinnitus, and I wonder sometimes about that. Like, is it artificial? So I actually think that's incredible that you've developed that. Man, so let people know where they can find you, because I know for a fact people are going to be reaching out once they listen to this interview.
Yeah, it's www.mindnexuslive.com, mindnexuslive.com. Just go there, get on our email list, ask whatever questions you want. Our team is really great at getting quick responses back now.
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I look forward to, hopefully connecting with you at our event. We'll talk more about that, but seriously, this is great stuff. I mean, it's scary too, but it's amazing that you're actually producing results, which I don't think people expected, especially the perpetrators and the people complicit in this stuff. It is even surprising to me that you're able to track who owns a frequency. I didn't even know that that was a thing. The NATO, literally, what did they do? Create a patent? How did they
Well,
claim
the FCC,
ownership?
the FCC gives leasing rights globally so that we don't have thing called crosstalk, or we interfere with other projects that people are engaging in. What we are finding is the frequencies that we're finding today are a little bit different than what we were finding back in 2010 to 15. Back then, it was mainly research organizations, universities. Today, a lot of these frequencies are going back to the Department of Defense, military subcontractors, and including some medical facilities with regards to telemetry, which is basically biosensor data being transmitted back and forth in real time. And these are the frequencies that we're detecting on a global scale now.
Wow. Yeah, this is a heavy topic, but very crucial, very much needed. So can't thank you enough for joining us today. And thank you guys all for being here. Make sure you go check out his website. Go check out the Mind Nexus event. Do you have dates for your next retreat yet?
No, it's about to come out. We think it's going to be in October. And it's probably going to be we're trying to dial it down, whether it's going to be in Oregon or in the Lake Tahoe area.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, stay tuned for that, anybody who's listening. And Aaron, did you have any last words for him before we wrap this up?
No, this is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you guys. Don't forget, grab a ticket to our conference. We'd love to see you there. And if you feel like you might have a chip and you want to get scanned, we might be able to provide service for you. So we'll talk with Jesse off camera, but either way, we're very excited about the event. JourneyToTruth.online is where you can find all that information. Grab a ticket and come hang out. Until next time, have a great evening. Good night.